just for some background, my name is Hirsch. I went to University of Miami. My lovely wife featured there, but
Aw.
not in present. We went to the University of Vermont, and we ended up doing the couples match in 2025. And I luckily matched at NYU for neurology. She matched at Cornell for anesthesia, and so we were both living in Manhattan. We've really enjoyed our life this past year. Obviously, residency is very tough, and I can only imagine how you guys feel with just a couple of days ahead, match day coming up. It's gonna be fantastic, but I would love to hear just a little bit about you guys, your background, what you guys applied into, how the process was, but maybe just intros first.
Go for it.
Sure. So my name's Matt. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Went to undergraduate out in Philly, and now I'm at the University of Toledo for medical school. My dad's actually a primary care pediatrician, so naturally I was pretty much going to do anything except for pediatrics when I entered medical school.
That's so
And
fun.
the apple doesn't fall so far from the tree, so I ended up applying pediatrics. Um, yeah, so that's where I am. We actually met in Toledo at medical school and crossed paths several times before this point, but never actually met each other.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Erica. I'm from the suburbs of Philadelphia. So that's like it's really nice when I get to go home and see family. And that Villanova friends are there. A place called Lebanon Valley College. It's near like Percy Park, Pennsylvania. And then kept drifting westward, and now I'm in Toledo. I'm applying PM&R. I was kind of like back and forth between neurology and PM&R for a really long time. But I really enjoyed spinal cord injury rehab. That's kind of like my at the end of the day, that'll be the goal of spinal cord injury.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, just big picture wise, how was the past year for you guys?
It was an exciting year. I feel like we literally just got engaged last month, so that was a fun
Wow,
start.
congratulations.
But the decision to couples match was one of those things where we both, I feel like, had a conversation about how strong we felt individually because our primary concern wasn't necessarily ourselves, but it was like, I don't want to affect your match in a negative way. So that was something that we sat and talked about. And like, thankfully, step two went really well, like better than we ever could have asked for. We both had our own strengths, like community service and involvement in teaching. So we felt pretty confident after sitting down, having like a very candid conversation that the couples match was not going to be a drawback for one another. Really nice that you're like an Excel, like you're so obsessed with using Excel in a good way because you needed it to like organize everything. But we had this initial plan that was like, oh, well, in the city, we'll aim for that city. And then after interviewing, we analyzed Philly. We thought we were going to just plant ourselves there and
Yeah.
that distance of like Grand Rapids, Michigan, Louisville, Kentucky, Charlotte, North Carolina. It's kind of fun 'cause at the end of the day, we recognize that if we are going to be in those places, at least to be there together if we didn't have family, and we have like some families like cousins and things nearby. So it's kind of fun to have the game plan change a little bit and just like explore the opportunity to go to different. Could you extend the interview to Matt and the same thing happened and against the belt?
It's definitely a lot more fun going through it together than going through it alone because I think you like meet all those hurdles and milestones together, and it's a lot easier to tackle them as two people rather than one. As far as like our decision to couples match goes, we were talking about it early on and trying to figure out like, do we just line up our preferences and hope that it lands in our favor and we end up in the same spot without couples matching? But I think the more we talked about it, our worst case scenario was not being together, which obviously can still happen. But I think we'd both rather be at our 10th or 15th or 20th program together than at our top programs but be separate, just because we want each other to have each other as support and want to have each other there for the journey. So that's really what went into our decision, the couples match. And honestly, it's made it that much more exciting because we find programs that we both like and some programs that one person's super hot on and the other one's kind of middle of the road on, but it makes it that much more exciting to kind of rank it when you know your partner likes it so much.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I feel like it's really fascinating to go through the process because you do hear all these like different stories and you get different aspects from different people's interviews. And then, like you said, I think the number one thing that most people will end up agreeing on is like we would like to be in the same place together. And I think like my wife and I, whenever we went through it, we had like multiple combinations where like, maybe, a 2 hour commute like, what if we do that? And then you're like, actually, that's a horrible idea. And I feel like once we got to residency, we were like, we are so grateful that it worked out the way that it did, or the list was made in the way that it was. But I think it's one of those really hard things that a lot of people do struggle with is like, I want to be as close to you as possible, but I really want to go to this program. And it's such a hard thing, to come across. Did you guys have any of that, or you guys every single way you guys were able to kind of maneuver the conversations to make a list that worked out for both of you?
Yeah, so I think that definitely early on, we kind of looked at it as like it's going to be a 50-50 split. And this is like, we're going to each have to make big compromises. And we'll look at your list, and there are some certain sacrifices that you'll make, and I'll look at my list and I'll make some sacrifices too. But we quickly figured out like our specialties and our career interests are so different that it doesn't necessarily go into that. Just for me going into pediatrics, across the board, my training's pretty standard. Like
Mhm.
40% of my time will be inpatient, 30 something percent, 40% is going to be outpatient, and the rest is elective. So as long as a hospital has the subspecialties that I'm interested in, as long as they have decent volume, I know I want to be at a freestanding filling hospital if I can be.
Mm,
Those are the things that were most important to me, and I can get that at the vast majority of places that I applied to. Whereas for Erica, and she's interested in neuro rehab, it's a lot more specific, and there are like very few hospitals that have that fellowship and very few hospitals that excel in that. So I
right.
think we found out very quickly that like it makes a lot more sense for Erica's top programs to kinda guide some of our ranking versus mine. That kinda answers that question a little bit. So, yeah, it's not all like we had everything and the road just kind of paved itself, but we kinda had to work towards it and figure out where we needed to make concessions.
And that's where the tool was so helpful because you can prioritize like one list over another, but then there was also the components of distance where you can like have more of a, I don't know, like penalty against a ranking because of distance. And for us, it was just so nice to have the tool make a list and then look at it and be like, does this fit what we want? Or we put the whole thing into an Excel sheet and we just slid things up and down kind of
Yeah.
as we soft it, or if we went to a second look and something kind of changed in our minds, and we can be like, okay, we colored this one, we're highlighting this one to come back to it later, maybe we'll adjust. So it's just so nice too because it brought or the tool at least brought like a little bit of objectivity to it, because sometimes it feels like we're trying to like figure it all out on our own. But even just to have all of the combinations in front of us and then be able to have the conversation and kind of like go back and forth and look at things in groupings of 40 and then kind of go down to the next. It was really nice to have a lot of the big decisions made for us and then just kind of talk like details and tiny moves. So,
Mm,
And truthfully, with the list too, like, I mean, if let's say we both had 12 interviews, that's 144 pairings. Truthfully, there's really no difference between ranking number 112, number 117, number 98. They're all effectively the same. I'd be equally content at all of them. So I think it was really nice to have a program that kind of like laid it out and said, like, you put your preferences in and then it spits out for you what they think the order should be. Because I honestly don't know how many hours and hours we would have tried to spend going through those rankings otherwise.
it's atrocious. I think that process is so painful, and I'm
Mhm.
glad that you guys found that part to be helpful because it's to discuss every combination is exhausting, and
Mhm.
even just to discuss your top combinations is exhausting, but I do think that that was always my goal is like, can we decrease the number of different combinations that you have to discuss as a couple so that at least like you're focusing majority of your time on the things that matter versus like you said all these other combinations. And I really like what you said, Erica, about the objectivity because I think that is actually the hardest part of the couples match is like you have an interview and then maybe like, Matt was naming, 30% of inpatient time or 40% inpatient time. Like that part won't change. Everything else is extremely subjective. How you felt about an interviewer, what they said, how it rubbed you. All these things are very, very subjective. But whenever you make your rank list, it's such an objective thing. And so to like try to have these conversations without the other person actually being in that interview or like hearing that presentation is so hard. So I'm glad the objectivity component kind of transfers over. Any things that you know I love hearing good things about the tool. So in terms of the tool, what were the most helpful parts and which features do you wish that you had? I know that you mentioned you wish that you could move it kind of up and down. That's a feature I added like very, very late. And
yeah.
so it's
Nice.
available now, but I know I don't know how many people were able to use that one, but just features that you really liked, features that you wish you had.
Yeah, I think the features that we utilize the most were, I think for a couples match in general, ranking in tiers was super, super helpful.
Yeah.
Because we're able to break it down and say like these three programs are like our top tier programs, I'd be equally happy at all of them. And I think it just makes that conversation easier once you get on to like making your pairings. So I loved that. And then the distance penalties or like having multiple options was also really helpful because there's a couple programs that we liked that are about an hour drive apart from each other. So we're able to kind of rope it into like that's our limit for how far we're willing to go is like that mid 30-minute point in between. And then after that, like putting a pretty heavy distance penalty on things. Those are super helpful.
Yeah, and even like kind of adding up the distance component, I really appreciated just showing the pilots between programs. I think in our heads we were like, oh, like how far apart could this and that be? Or like programs must be so far apart. Recognizing that some places may be closer than we realized or further than we realized was helpful in kind of with those middle of the road rankings, like figuring out maybe what's more feasible or less feasible.
Yeah.
And filled our like criteria or like met kind of like both of our wants for a rank plus that was really nice because I mean for our top programs like in our heads I think we knew what our top like 5 pairings were for sure. But then at a certain point you're like, oh yeah, I do really like all of these programs in tier 2 and I'd be very happy at all of these. And then we just look and we're like, okay, then how can we both be getting most of what we want in these like middle of the tier, like middle upper programs. So I really liked those like scoring metrics. That was really nice.
Things that would have been helpful. So since PM&R has like advanced and categorical positions,
Mm,
we ended up like we downloaded it into a spreadsheet. And I actually don't know if this is on there or not. It very well might be, and we just didn't utilize it. Uh,
mhm,
but because they have both positions, we
Mm.
had downloaded it and then would like double her rankings for all the advanced or ones that had like categorical and advanced positions,
Yeah, I
if that
probably
makes
could
sense.
just put them in.
But they might have been options on there now that we think about it.
no, 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 I think that's not a feature right now, and that's a great one to have, at least for the 300 combinations kind of component, just so that you can fill it in. That's a great point. Do you think that whenever you have a feature like that, does it change where it falls on your list if it's categorical versus advanced? Or do you
For us,
feel like whenever you made it, it would always be kind of together?
It did for us. I think we prioritized the categorical programs because then we at least knew we'd be in the same place for all 4 years and it reduced moving. So the advanced programs, I think what tended to happen is they would fall like kind of just like 5 or 6 spots below where the categorical ones were. I think it was just like for the sake of space because then we made we made a list and then we were like, oh my gosh, some of these are like some programs for me, it's kind of weird. Some would be 6 spots, but 2 spots are categorical and 4 are advanced or vice versa. So it was just those programs where they had the hidden like dual categorical advanced that that kind of like just slipped through my mind and maybe just could have ranked it as its own separate mark. Yeah, that was the only thing I think maybe that was like a combination of user error. Maybe. But yeah, that would have been helpful. And the sliding thing was what I was gonna mention, so I'm so glad that's in there because that's just like super helpful to be able to kind of move things up and down.
Yeah. And right now it only exports as a PDF, correct? And there's no CSV feature, right? You can't
no, I think we downloaded it as a CSV
CSV.
actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. I'm glad that I built that in. I think with the advanced versus categorical, the reason I didn't build it in initially is because it's very like you said, there's like where it falls on the list. I think that part becomes a little more arbitrary. And so
Yeah.
for me to assign that a number based off of God knows what,
Yeah.
it's pretty hard. But
That's
I hear your point that it could be nice to have it on there, and then you guys can slide it up and down. That makes sense.
but yeah, no, I have also we understand that that's like a logistical nightmare sometimes. So we appreciate all the work that you put into it. It saved us hours and hours and hours of work. So thank you.
Anything else that you would want others to know, things that you guys did that you found to be helpful that people in the future could maybe do to help their conversations, their process? It's so different and it's very unique and it's incredibly personal. And but I do think that we lose a lot of it whenever we say that it's personal and then we don't give any advice. Whereas
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's better to say it's personal and this is what we did. And so I think it's helpful to hear those experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that we had some mentors tell us that we ended up doing was we kept our own separate rank lists the whole way through.
Okay.
So I didn't know where Erica was ranking her programs. She didn't know where her programs were ranked on my list necessarily. And we would talk about it after interviews and be like, hey, I really like this place. Here are some things that stuck out to me so that we both had like context for later on when we were ranking. But I thought it was really helpful from like a bias perspective that like I could truly rank what I liked, not being impacted by what Erica likes, because I also like want her to be happy with our match. And if she interviews and absolutely loves the program, I'm going to be biased going into it and want to like it more.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I think just being very like not trying to like beat around the bush in any conversation with your partner when it comes to couples matching. I think I was very grateful that we talked about couples matching probably, I don't know, like beginning of doing our ERAS, like a month before we actually started working on ERAS, like the very beginning of that process over the summer. We were very clear that we wanted to couples match and had talked about it. I think I've run into a handful of friends here in Toledo who are applying programs that maybe have like a lot more combinations like internal medicine, family, but they are a couple but chose to not couples match. And now that the
Really.
season is upon us, they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I couples match. Like this is kind of a nightmare trying to like hope for the best. And so I think um just encouraging people that like if it's a possibility, even if it's someone that you're like dating for a few months, but you're like this could be a long-term thing, like not shying away from it because I would hate for someone to be, 8 months ahead of that whole process and then it's a very helpful tool. I also think it is important to talk about how we felt about programs, but you're right, like not let it bias one another.
Mm.
Like I remember there was a program where I just went to like a I don't know like and it was not high on our radar and then I turned around to Matt. I was like, I actually might like it here. So maybe maybe we should go back at least on the website and take another look. Like, not doesn't mean you have to like be, changing it to our number one, but then like bringing more attention to the program. Does it have features that we overlooked because it wasn't necessarily our expected number one? So I think just like being open to liking new places and also not being so stuck to a plan. Like we in our heads mentally had a city and two programs that we were pretty positive were going to be our number one and that wasn't going to budge. And then just after the interview process and talking to people and getting to know different programs, that flipped on its head. And it's still a high up there program, but it's not our number one. And for us for a long time it was like, okay, and our expected plan has kind of gone out the window, but how exciting is it to have other programs that we like? So just to like not be disappointed if plans
Yeah.
change and be open and excited that there are different opportunities that you didn't expect and really just embrace that because at least you're going to be doing it.
That makes sense. That's amazing. I'm gonna stop the recording.